Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show, broadcasting live from Jerusalem to the world. You're a part of it wherever you are. Shalom, and welcome to Beit Midrash Sulam Yaakov. Shalom, and welcome to Rabbi Mike Feurer. Rabbi Mike, shalom.
Oh, shalom, Yishai. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you, and I look out the window, and I see, because we're in Beit Midrash Sulam Yaakov, I'm looking out, and I see those very grapes
that we've been speaking about for years now.
Right, I see it there. There they are again. The grapevine is growing. And I see the grapes, and I'm always amazed that we're in the Torah portions. For example, Parshat Shlach that we learned, already 2 weeks ago, that talked about that the 9th of Av is the V'hayamim Yemei Bikurei Anavim. It's the first days of the grape
first fruits
of the grapes, right? And I see them, and they're not yet ripe yet, and they're all over Yerushalayim and Gush Etzion and Hebron, where I work and travel, and It's like it's grape season in the summer in Israel. It's so beautiful, these grapes, so majestic, and we have a beautiful and majestic and entirely weird Torah portion.
It's pretty freaky,
right? Here's the thing: you and I have already in our little discussion before the show, I've already realized that we have a bit of a disagreement on understanding what is the main impetus of the Torah portion. As I understand it, your main impetus, you always see the main impetus of the Torah portion as being
death.
The issue of death.
Death. Like it runs like a river through this parsha.
Right, and we're going to talk about the death of Aaron, the death of Miriam, Aharon, and Miriam, and then we're going to also talk about really essentially the death of Moses, as he's kind of told he's not going to the land.
And it's also the end of the death march.
And the death of that's right,
and
a new
people
generation.
Wish for death again.
They would a little bit, right?
Not to mention, what do you mean explicitly? And then not to mention the fact that Torah Adam, Shiamut, right? This is the Torah of man, that he's going to die.
Right, and also right in the beginning, the paraduma is to help you get rid of the death energy.
So it's just kind of a minor
thesis. It's a big theme here, okay? My grouping of this week's Torah portion is that almost everything really weird is in this week's parsha.
All
and
it's lumped in there?
It's all lumped in there. It's called, the Torah portion is called chukat, which means the kind of laws that don't make earthly sense to us, that we can't gather the sense of, and a lot of things here, including strange poetry, including the strange event of the copper snake. Which, by the way, parenthetically, you know how you've always thought that the snake around the stick, that's a symbol for healing, for medicine, right? You've always thought it was a Greek thing, right?
Well, I actually haven't always thought, because I've been familiar with this Torah portion, but people do indeed believe so.
But it's not.
I don't actually know how old the Greek origin is, but certainly we have a strong contender.
That's right. The snake, the copper snake, we'll talk about that.
So your theme is that this is the platypus of all the
That's right.
Torah portions.
That's exactly right. This is the weird one. This is when weird things happen, weird things are said, and just weird things are done. And it's just like this is a Torah portion where you're like, weird poetry especially, that notice it's never in the can, like there's no prayers that take in these, some of these poems that are here. They're biblical poems, but they're not, nobody considers them the great songs of the Bible.
Obscure.
They're obscure. I'm telling you, it's the obscure Torah portion of weird stuff.
Okay.
And that's why I like it so much, because let's just get weird. And what could be weirder than starting with the commandment of the Red Heifer, right? A Jew touches a dead body or is in a tent with a dead body, he becomes impure to the death energy, dark energy of death. It like sticks on you. Ew.
It's contagious as well.
Yeah.
Because if you actually touch a dead body, you can give it to someone else.
Right.
You become a source of it yourself.
Right. So it makes a lot of sense that the people who are preoccupied with being the eternal people, with the eternal city, as I always tell you, that's my favorite name for Yerushalayim, Ir HaNetzach,
yes.
The eternal city, or city of eternity, or city of victory, because if you outlast the other folks, you win, right?
That is true. Hold fast out there, people.
Right. So how does this nation going to beat the normative energy of death? It's an energy that takes over everything. It's called entropy. It's a scientific principle. All things, all electrons seek to be in a less intense place. All buildings seek to go back to being dust. All things want naturally to go to a state of lesser exercise of energy. Basically, all things want to be lazy.
Things fall apart.
Things fall apart. Things tend to fall apart.
Yes.
That's
the
what
direction of existence.
Right. So therefore, all empires come and go, right? All buildings, all things built come and go.
People are born and then they die.
Then they die, except for one nation, which is connected to God and also has these, let's call them tricks, by which to beat death, to shortcut death, to shortchange death, I mean.
Well, here, I don't know that we're talking about shortchanging death. I think that really this is about changing consciousness. Because, it's probably not the place to try to get to the bottom of the nature of what does it mean that coming in contact with a dead body gives us impurity. But nevertheless, just on a very experiential level, I know that you have had the experience of seeing a dead body.
Many times.
Yeah.
Many times.
I haven't had many times. I had enough to know that.
Quite a bit. Jews and non-Jews.
Yes. Myself as well. And I've had enough experience to know that there is something deeply disconcerting about seeing the body on that level for what it is. Something which will rot in the ground. And I think that...
And it's rotting the minute it's dead.
The second the soul leaves.
Right.
That's what the sages said, that, that a baby who's alive doesn't need to be protected from the rats, but Og Melech Bashan, right, the giant, the biblical giant, as soon as he's dead, you better watch out.
It's funny you mention Og. He's in this parsha.
I saw him coming.
Right? And he's
in terms of all the weird things.
Right, he's a weird guy.
Yeah.
He's a weird
and notice
thing.
the sages connect him to death as
right,
well.
They connect him to death. Interestingly, they also connect him to overcoming death himself. The Medrash says that during the flood, there's the ark, there's the animals, there's Noah and his family, and there's a dude, a giant dude.
Who's hanging on behind.
He's hanging on to the ark.
Who apparently was a little window there that Noah fed him through.
He fed him through. That's right.
Yeah. We got to get to the bottom of that at some point.
I think I once had an understanding about that we all carry with us a kind of Yetzer Hara that we feed, right?
That's very true in terms of the sages saying that we carried idolatry out with us from Egypt. There's a theme there.
Right.
Right. To be returned to.
Right.
But
can you just picture it, this like boat that you've always imagined on the surface of this watery earth,
right, with all the animals inside,
right? And then there's one dude, and he's hanging out with one hand,
breaststroke,
right, and with another hand he's swimming along,
holding the rudder.
From time to time, Noah feeds him a little food.
You gotta wonder what he was feeding him too.
Why is he feeding this evil giant that Moses has to kill at the end?
Well, I mean, maybe he wasn't evil then. Anyway, my point is that I think that the connection between the Red Heifer and the impurity of death, at the risk of trying to answer a question that even Moshe Rabbeinu was not privy to, comes in the sense that the fear and the impurity and the loss of sanctity that come with death are rooted in our sense that we understand it. Right? Meaning there's something very brutally logical about death. Like you see a dead body, you say, oh, right, I'm not going to last. I get it. Everything dies. And there's a very easy path to pursue from there, which is, and therefore, in modern terms, therefore all my senses of eternity, all my stories about how I will live on, about how God has a plan, all these things are really just psycho-emotional thumb-sucking to get me around the reality of what this dead body is. And there's a very stark moment of looking at death, which is infectious. It can really sort of like creep into your consciousness and sow a lot of doubts in a person's experience. And I think that the Red Heifer, of course, makes, as you said, no sense at all. But let me get this straight. You're going to take a cow that's all red. You're going to burn it. Well, you slaughter it first when I'm burning it alive, right? You slaughter it, burn it, mix it with some plants and some red dyed wool, and the ashes are going to solve that problem? And I think the answer is yes, they will, because what you're doing is accepting the fact that you don't understand. That the world is not bounded by our grasp of it, and therefore death is a great mystery, it's true, but it's not necessarily a great tragedy. And I think that there's a very important opening here, as you pointed out, chukat, right? The chok is a particular type of statute of law, which is not only not meant to be understood, but it's a completely different type of law. Because there's an important Hebrew word, right? L'chakek, or chakika, which means what?
Chiseling in, what's it called?
Engraving.
Engraving, yeah.
Right. You realize there's two ways to communicate something. You can take a pen and you put it on a piece of paper. That's knowledge that comes through adding one thing to another. That's we're most familiar with. The other way, though, is when you engrave, you actually take something away in order to learn something. And that's what a chok is. What we're giving up is the sense that we can't actually understand. And through that, a tremendous field of knowledge opens up.
But it does effectuate actual change. It's not a placebo. It's not just a test of faith. The red heifer gets rid of. And by the way, let me add one more thing for people to know. There were 9 red heifers over history. A 10th one is supposed to yet emerge.
I think they're working on it down in Texas.
They sure are working on it. They really are. There's farms in Israel that are growing red heifers. And there's, as usual in Judaism, it's very halachic. It's not just a red heifer. It's got to have this. It's got to have that. It can't have this. Can't have that. Very, very minute details. And by the way, if you think about it, our halacha is really how life really works. Life works on the minutest details.
Absolutely.
If you would take one cell of the human body and study it, you would be amazed at the minute details of what happens in any cell and how it works and the knowledge encrypted within.
And God forbid one goes rogue and decides that it wants to be everything. We call that cancer.
That's right. So the red heifer, I want to add also that the red heifer was done in eye shot of the Holy of Holies. And the Talmud goes out of its way to talk about the height of this wall and that wall in order that when the high priest... Excuse me, a priest, not the high priest. A priest, any priest, I think.
In the presence of the high priest.
Right.
It's all done in the presence of.
Right. They've got to be able to see the Holy of Holies.
Sorry, in the presence of the Sagan, of the assistant to the high priest.
Right.
Because in our parsha, it's Elazar.
It's Elazar, and he's the number 2. Although he's going to take...
He's about to take over, but it happens when he's still number 2.
And so you have to look, you have to peer into, from the Mount of Olives where I live, into the Holy of Holies.
Has to be line of sight.
Interestingly, the Mount of Olives later becomes a cemetery.
Yes.
And I always like to think that one of the reasons why the high priest, who's not supposed to even be in a cemetery, is supposed to go to the Mount of Olives, is because he's also saying to death, hey, energy of death, I can approach you, go right into you, and stick my finger in your eye. We, the eternal people, have this way, this secret way to chisel. We don't exactly understand it, but to ward off death.
Because we've been given to know in real experience and not just in knowledge and text since ancient times that death is not the end.
Doesn't it sometimes, don't you kind of want to yell at people when they tell you, how do you, what's your proof for God? I always just want to tell people the proof for God is so obvious. It's the people of Israel. I mean, that's the proof that God exists.
Although I tend, in my own personal practice, to just what's the word I'm looking for? Pity is not the right word. I empathize.
I pity the fool.
I'm saddened by people who ask that question because that question belies an answer. Someone who's asking you for proof is feeling an emptiness within themselves that can only be filled by relationship.
I told you about the kids in Livingston who on Shavuot night I had a session with them, teenagers, and they go, and I'm like, you can ask me any questions. They're like, okay, why be Jewish? Why buy into this whole thing?
Right, it's a good question.
It was a great question. I wasn't quite ready for that question.
Yeah, that's kind of a
because
whack.
Right, because I'm like, and I really thought it out with them together, but I was like, I could see that because they had no war, no challenge, no problem, no inability to get married outside of the faith, no fiscal issue, social issue. There was, it was like there was no need that religion filled. And so if you don't have that whole God thing in you and believe that the Torah is real, then it wasn't such an easy answer.
It is not such an easy answer, but have that God thing in you is the answer, meaning issues of belief and intellectuality are exactly what this parsha comes to fight against. And that's where I believe that I agree with you, that it's not just a parsha of death, it's a parsha of the platypus, meaning that if you build your entire relationship to God around your intellectual grasp, and that's what proofs are, then you have one of two choices. You can become a heretic or a fundamentalist, meaning you can doubt God, or you can shrink God to fit your conception. But I don't know about you. I don't want to worship any God that's small enough to fit inside my understanding.
Right.
And so we're left with the chukim, which is okay then.
Right. He's bigger than me. And here's some weird stuff in a weird Torah portion that is way beyond your understanding.
And yet you also identify the very important piece, which is Am Yisrael, which means history. It's like, well, okay, let's tell this story. This is what I'm trying to do in my podcast, The Jewish Story. Let's just tell the story. Now you tell me where this is all going.
Good. Now that leads us right into one of the prime movers of Jewish history, who's about to leave Jewish history, and that's Moses, okay? Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe, our great leader, our great rabbi, our great sage, our number one man,
The father of the prophets.
father of the prophets. And it's not easy to understand sometimes where he fits in our quote unquote pantheon here, because it's like you got Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're the founders. You got David, first king. You got but Moses, and sometimes it's like Moses is bigger than everything else, because Moses is that linkage between God and man. The Torah is channeled through a man named Moses.
Yes.
The whole thing.
I mean,
Sometimes when you think about who do you want to meet, you think of all these other rabbis, but then you're like, can I really see Moses? And on the other hand, all the movies, the famous movies about the Bible, it's always Moses, right?
Yeah.
It's like, could I ever meet Moses? What does it mean to see a man who has a shiny face, whose face is shining with God's light? What does that even mean? So it's like part lore. It's like I can't even imagine it. Part like, it's like a figure that you can relate to kind of, because you've seen him before. You've seen him in The Prince of Egypt,
and he's all over the Bible.
He is the Bible, right? He is the Bible. He's the 5 books of Moses, so-called 5 books of Moses, right?
Yeah, I mean, in that pantheon you were speaking about, I mean, Moshe represents da'at. He represents consciousness. I mean, he runs through it all. And that's why he brought down the Torah. It's why he's the most present in our minds. Right? Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are people in history, as is Moshe, but Moshe is also a way of knowing the world. That's what he was able to hand down to us. We struggle to know the world like Abraham, like know the world like Yitzchak. I mean, how do I do that? But I know how to know the world like Moshe. Not that I necessarily succeed, but he gave us the Torah.
And in this week's Torah portion, a new generation that doesn't know him as well, that hasn't hanged out with him, at the beer bazaar of Egypt. They haven't been there with him. They suddenly say to him, we're dying out here. There's no water. Why have you brought us out here to die in the desert? Us and our animals. Why have you brought us out of Egypt to bring us to this place, this bad place? This is not a place of seed, fig, grape, and pomegranate. There's no water to drink. And classically,
in the Sinai Desert, it's
brutal.
Brutal.
It's brutal, super brutal. Okay, really, it's not something you can survive for really not a long time. If you think you're out of water, you're like,
you're done.
Yeah, you're done. And so, but Moses and Aaron do this whole. There they go again, falling on their faces, and they're pretty brokenhearted. God, though, on the other hand, seems filled with equanimity. He says, "Listen, take the staff, gather the assembly, you and Aaron your brother. Speak to the rock before their eyes, and it shall give you waters. You shall bring forth for them water from the rock, and give them to drink the assembly and their animals." And Moses is going to go to this session, and seemingly he's very angry, and he's going to strike the rock poignantly twice. You can imagine the dramatic moment. He says, "Here you go, Jews, I'll show you." Hits the rock.
Little drip of water.
Of water comes out, and there's a moment where it's like, you made a mistake. It's not what I asked.
Back down.
Right, and he hits it again, and then the water comes out, but you got a feeling that God didn't want to embarrass his servant Moses, but there was a mistake happen here.
It's not going to end well.
Right, it's not going to end well, ostensibly. And the depth of it is the difference in tone between Moses and God. Moses is treating this new generation like they're the old generation, and that their mistakes are compounded. While God is like, these little kindalach, they don't really know. They're a little stubborn like their parents, but give them another chance. There's like some kind of sense like, no. You got to start with these over. You got to start again with these folks. And Moses is still carrying, shall we say, the grudge, the weight, the pain of the past, many mistakes, falls, and complaints, and he's treating them with that kind of he's carrying over from the past.
I mean, as parents, we can relate to that, right? But it's what every child needs, or every person really, but certainly every child needs, is to be related to as they are now, and not to be sort of an accretion of all the mistakes that we've made in the past. And I think it's extremely important that they're sitting here on the edge of the land of Israel, which is going to be a completely new existence. completely new existence, right? And yet Moshe is unable, as you said, unable to see through that accumulated argument and suffering and pulling and pushing he's had. And so he's of course literally been here before. We had this incident already with the previous generation of we're going to die, there's nothing to drink, and God actually then told him to strike the rock. You can see Moshe's like, where am I right now? We're right back at square one.
But God, and you know, from reading the text, you don't necessarily know that it's a new generation.
True.
It doesn't actually say that to you, but indeed it is. And our sages explain it, and you can and then suddenly makes a lot of sense to understand that it's a new generation. And there's the bad news. The bad news is you didn't believe in me. God says you didn't believe in me to sanctify me in front of the nation of Israel. Therefore, you are not going to come into the land of Israel. Okay, and it seems like really harsh. Whoa, like I just made a mistake with the rock. What happened? This is Moses. I think the kind of simple depth of it is like you belong to a different time. Mm-hmm. You're part of that other generation. And then Moses is going to say that in the book of Deuteronomy. He's going to say in Dvarim. He's going to say like, you know, I got punished because of the sin of the spies but in a sense he says, yeah, I was part of your generation.
Yes.
And there's a new generation, and Moses is not part of that. All right, but here's the best part about Moses. Moses gets bad news. You're not going to the land of Israel, but I do need you to continue to.
We still got a long way to go to the border.
Yeah, I need you to get out there and put on your general out fight
some battles.
Right. How do you see Moses? Is he this religious guy, religious spiritual guy, or does he have a beret and can you see him have many swords?
That's kind of how I see Yehoshua.
Right, Joshua. But here Moses, and this is the Torah portion of Moses being this real fighter guy.
I see he and Shmuel in the same way in that light. Meaning they're walking around with a staff and robes, holy guy, most of the time. But they're kind of like a Jedi.
Right,
don't
Jedi,
mess.
Jedi.
He looks a little bit old and kind of decrepit, and he's probably focused on his books, but I wouldn't step to him.
Right. He's taking that staff and suddenly things are flying. Anyway, I think that's a good way to see it. They go to the king of Edom. They ask to pass in his land. He says no. Meaning to say they're now trying to go into the land of Israel, but not everybody's very hospitable to their track.
Correct. They're trying to come in from the south at this point.
And they get a big fat no thanks.
And God makes them go around.
He makes them go around because Edomites, children of Esav, have their own merit and don't start up with them. Okay.
Their inheritance as well, meaning it is their land.
But Israel asks to go without touching the land, with paying for the water.
It's a family battle.
Right, exactly. Family feud here. It keeps going. Bad news is that Aaron is going to now be asked to go up to the mountain Hor Hahar and to go up with Moses and with Eleazar to strip, take his priestly clothes off, see his own son be donned with those priestly clothes, and then Aaron is going to be given the kiss of death.
Yep. And
he's going to kind of leave the scene. So seeing his own son take his mantle, because the Levite Kohen line is a hereditary line, unlike, for example, the Moses thing, and the Jewish people are going to cry for Aaron for 30 days. 30 days, all of the house of Israel, i.e., the women of Israel, because the peacemaker. Aaron, the peacemaker of the family of the Jewish home, is now going to leave the scene.
I mean, it was a tremendous loss to have someone who was so committed to Am Yisrael that he saw a truth that really transcended the particular perspective of each one, right? The famous story about Aaron that two friends or a husband and wife were fighting, and he would go to one and say, oh, your friend really wants to make up, and of course he's lying. And he'd go to the other one and say, oh, your friend really wants to make up, So I told my kids this story, and then they come back together and they're reconciled. I told my kids this story, and they were very upset. They said, well, he's a liar. And I said, no, he's not. They said, what do you mean? He didn't tell the truth. I said, yes, he did. And what do you mean? I said, because the truth of the matter is these two people love each other. There was some falsehood that got between them. And Aaron wasn't going to fall prey to letting the facts define the truth. because he knew the truth of their love and their relationship. Again, it's consistent with your platypus theory, right? That the truth is something much bigger. It's not that the facts are irrelevant. I'm not going there right now. It's just that the holiness of Aaron and his role as high priest to be able to always reconcile between God and Israel, even more so than Moshe, is in his ability to hold that truth, which is larger than the facts.
Yeah, and he. If you remember how Aaron's career started, basically, this is the way I always read it: that Moses says to God, "Listen, I am a harsh talker. Like I am not a soft talker. I do not have a
Smooth tongue.
Yeah, I don't have a smooth tongue. I have a heavy tongue. I talk heavy talk. I come down heavy on issues.
Say it like it is.
Right, I say it like it is. I'm from Dugri. I say it frontally. That's a Hebrew word, a Hebrew slang word. But so God says, no problem. I'll bring you. You'll be the prophet, and I'll bring you somebody who's the mouth. If you remember the 18 face, right? like he'll be like face, and that's what Aaron is. Aaron is, I think, the diplomat. Okay, the diplomat, not like one of the diplomats today that are only talking diplo talk, but he's the you know what, the negotiator, the what do they call alternative peace negotiation, alternative conflict resolution.
Yes,
that's who he is, and the children of Israel cry for him, and of course he carries with him also, because of him, are these clouds of glory, and the minute he dies, the clouds of glory kind of disappear, and the Jewish people are a little bit less protected. They're exposed. And that's part of the process. It's like the egg that breaks, and the chick has to come out. You the protection's less, but you're out. And okay, they leave Hor Hahar after those 30 days. They're tired of they're tired of God's good stuff. This time they're tired of the manna, and they complain. Suddenly, snakies are everywhere.
Fiery serpents.
They're like
biting people.
They're biting people. People are dying. It's
pandemonium. They're crying in the tents.
Just can you imagine it? I envision it.
You're running and stumbling over tents.
You see, the comic books are never filled with this. The movies like this is awesome. We're talking about like some kind of video game. It's like a fiery snaky thing going on. Then God asks one of the. God says to Moses one of the definitely most platypusy of all things, and that is that he says, make a copper snake. All right? Put it on a pole. All right? I want you to, and when people see it, they'll be healed. Right? And our rabbis say they looked up to heaven. Another way to understand it is they actually understood, and you can understand this from their response. They look up and they see this copper snake. And they get healed from it. That's where we talk. That's the sign of the of medicine. But there's a line here, I can't find it right now, where they say we sinned because we spoke evil against you. Mm-hmm. And there's an understanding that it was the evil speech.
It's you want me to read it?
Where is it?
It's here in the 21st chapter, the 7th line.
Right. And ubach.
Sorry.
Meaning to say, we sinned because we spoke evil. Whoa, that was a big rectification. It's like you haven't heard that. We sinned this time. Oh no! How many more of us are going to die? No, this time they're like, you know what? My bad. And my bad is in my speech.
Yes.
My bad is in my speech. And that's what the snake symbolizes. The snake symbolizes the evil speech. They looked up. They were like, okay, now I got it. I'm getting bitten down here because of this. That big snake is actually the snake of Lashon Hara. And I recognize that now. I see it, of evil speech, slanderous speech, and all that, negative speech. And now I can atone because God has, not only has he healed me, but he's also informed me what is my problem.
And the two come together, because I really believe that true healing comes when you're able to look what you've done in the face. Right? That, I think, is the power of when God says, make the snake, hang it there. Don't tell the people what they've done wrong.
Right.
Make them see it. Because once they look in the face what they've done wrong, and they're modeh, right, they admit it like they did here, then healing will come. Right.
So realization, admitting it. We have a concept of like that for tshuva.
For sure.
Tshuva, which is you have to...
Vidui. You got to confess.
Confess. That's not a Catholic idea.
No, not at all. I mean, I think it's
Although
a
I've always told you that's my favorite thing in Catholicism.
I think it's a very human idea.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that until you take what is inside you and you put it outside enough that you can look it in the face, no real healing can come.
Okay, here comes some more unusual stuff. I'll have to read it in the English here.
Wait, it's now time to talk about lemon water?
Yes, lemon water. Thank you for reminding me about lemon water. It's funny you say that because I was thinking this is a good time to talk about lemon water. Recently, I've been squeezing lemon into the lemon fruit and like on one of those turny squeezy things and
A
juicer and I've been making a jug of water at night with a half a lemon and then just sticking it into the fridge. In the morning, there's cold lemon juice. Now, lemon water. Now, it happens to be that I was once diagnosed with a bit of a fatty liver, okay? And they say it's good for you to drink lemon water. It's also good to drink some like a spoonful of olive oil. But what I wanted to tell you is that recently I've been drinking this lemon water, and it's made me just so happy. Every time I'm like, this is so tasty. And you know, when I was a kid, I hated lemons. Like, lemons, what are they there for?
Ew.
They're so bitter. Now I'm like, lemon water, this is awesome. Thank you, Hashem, for this lemon water in my fridge.
Have you told your mother?
I told my mom, and she's like, of course, lemon water, of course. I mean, come on, we always drink lemon water. You know, and I'm like, I love lemon water, you know. And it's just recently I've had a lot of stress, thank God. You know, generally good stress, although I had a little bit of a bad stress in that my son, Elazar Menachem Ben Malka, contracted strep, and from that had a complication called purpura, which is these like little blood vessels bursting in your legs. They're not bursting, like water, blood seeps through the veins and arteries, and it's like in his legs and stuff, and it takes 3 weeks to heal or something. It's really very ugly and unpleasant. It'll go away hopefully, but generally, like a lot of stresses other than that, also fighting UNESCO, which is trying very hard to declare that the tombs of our fathers and mothers are not the tombs of our fathers and mothers, and that it's a Palestinian heritage site, i.e. you Jews were never here. Okay, what I call now national identity theft. Okay? And we're trying to fight national identity theft. And all that in the last few days, including in the lemon water, I've been just like, life is so good. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you for these lemons of Eretz Yisrael. Like, this is so tasty.
So what you're saying is that when life gives you lemons, you should make lemon water?
Make lemon water. And, like, I don't know. For me, I think one of my... and it's maybe one of my favorite things about me. My favorite thing... Do you like things about yourself better and worse? Sure, right?
Yeah, I haven't found the ones I like, but I definitely got the worst.
Well, you should... You know, we all have things that we like about ourselves. And, like, one of the things that I like best about myself is that I appreciate life. And I've been taking moments every day, in driving especially, in times like... okay, simmer down. It's all good. It's all good. You know, and life is good, and this time is good, and this lemon water is just so good.
Okay, I'm going to have to try some of that.
I don't know. I can't. I really have tried to explain it, but that was it. Okay, maybe that was part of the platypus of Torah portions.
But it certainly fits in.
Right.
In not fitting in.
How about this part? Therefore it is said in the book of the wars of Hashem, He has given with tempest-like speed, and the rivers of Arnon, the outpouring of the rivers when it veered to dwell at Ar, and lean against the border of Moab. And from there to the well. It is the well of which Hashem said to Moses, assemble the people, and I shall give them water.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Okay. I mean, it's like when the Bible goes biblical.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. You lost me there. You lost me, Moshe.
You know,
Wind back.
And you know that there's super depth here.
Yes.
You know that there's super duper depth here, just like the Paraduma, just like the Red Heifer. But it's like you look around and you're like, this is an impenetrable few verses.
Although there's one thing I love about it in its simplicity is it's clearly talking directly to someone who knows what it's talking about.
Okay.
You know what I mean? No,
Yeah.
it's an important insight in understanding the Torah, is that the Torah is eternal and it came from God, but it was given to specific people. And so therefore, sometimes what appears to us completely mysterious is because, unfortunately, we're at a distance from the intimacy of the people to whom it was given.
Right.
Right. Just think about the fact that we don't know what this Sefer Milchamas Hashem is, this book of the wars of the Lord. Clearly, the people that Moshe was talking to knew what it was.
Right.
right? And here we have a little fragment
So
of it.
you're saying it's a book for its time as well as eternal.
Yeah, listen, this is the great paradox within Revelation that philosophy has always attacked, which is that Revelation by definition is parochial. What do I mean? If God spoke to Am Yisrael, then he spoke to us in a specific place at a specific time to specific people. It doesn't mean that what he revealed wasn't eternal, but it actually had to be comprehensible.
I would have thought that you said Revelation is, by definition, eternal, since Revelation is God's word. God, kind of almost has a hard time fitting himself into
for sure, but
parochial times.
No, but parochial because it's revelation, as opposed to philosophy, right? This is the great argument of the Middle Ages, which we don't have to get into right now. But
I can see Middle Ages people arguing about this.
This was big time. They were killing each other over it.
Today we're just like, what?
Yeah. Well, actually, no, because in
How
many
much
ways,
is the Starbucks coffee?
you want to know what you want to know what the parallel is in our times? Wait. God has a people and they're supposed to be in their land?
Right.
No. Anything which is true is universal.
Right.
There's no significance to specificity, to border. The solution is that everything should be the same and equal. Right? We've been carrying around this sense that God spoke to us. Listen, I'm not to exclusion of you. On the contrary, I can at another time speak out to you how actually the fact that God chose a specific people in a specific time, a specific place, means that God cares about every specific person in their specific time and specific place. Because love is always specific. Love is never just general. You don't love the idea of your wife. You love your wife. And that comes with a lot of work because your wife is real. Well, it was wonderful. That's not what I'm saying, but you get my point. Is that we don't love the idea of our children. We don't love the idea of God. And therefore, the power of revelation is in its specificity, its parochial, but its revelation of the universal.
Specific love to the Jewish people yields jealousy, anger, and jealousy.
Yeah.
And that jealousy, I like the rabbi's statement, very famous statement and very true statement, that one of the reasons Sinai is called Sinai is because it's brought sinah into the world.
Yard sinah lolam, yeah.
Right, like it brought hatred into the world. Like the choosing of Israel, and in part really anti-Semitism, which everybody's always talking about and trying to understand, is in part really quite simple. It's Cain and Abel. It's Cain, which is kin'ah. It's jealousy.
But better hatred than apathy. Because the reality is that hatred has an emotional charge and an energy around it that can be transformed to good. I mean, I can tell you as a teacher that the disruptive, disrespectful student is always better than the completely apathetic and passive one.
Right. That's
even though they need to be.
Famous Hasidic story is that there was like then there's actual names attached to these people. Two Litvaks, Lithuanian-style Jewish Torah students, and they're studying in the study hall, and he sees one of them sees a Nusach Ari sitter in the shul. In the Beit Midrash, he sees that's a type of
mystic.
What's it called? Nusach? How do you say nusach?
Liturgy. It's a mystical liturgy.
Right, but nusach
is a liturgy. It's a specific liturgy.
Right, specific. Right, it's as opposed to another.
Yeah, another.
Nusach, it's a
another type of liturgy. I mean, it's the same liturgy, it's a different brand.
Right.
I don't know if there is a version.
Okay, let's say a different version. Let's put it that way. And he takes it. And he throws it on the floor and he stomps on it. He's like, "This is usher," and he sees it being as really evil. And there was another rabbi there, and he said, "You see that?" Oh, the other student said, "Look, they have their own way," And the other rabbi said, and a third rabbi says, "You see the one that flipped out? He's going to become a great Hasidic rabbi because he's got fire.
Right?
He's fired up." I don't know. To me, when I hear that story, I'm always like, I would have been the other guy who's like, listen, they've got their way.
Yeah.
What are you so worried about?
It's a question.
Right. But sometimes having holy fire being turned on, the Hasidic movement is always very focused on that. For example, one of their explanations that I like about why the River Nile turned to blood is to show you how to serve God. Don't serve him in cold water. Serve him in hot blood. And there's more and more examples of that. Certainly, in my work for Chevron and general for pro-Israel advocacy, I also see that really what really separates the toys from the. I don't like to say the men from the boys, but let's say the men from the boys and the women from the gals is
the serious from the not serious.
The serious from not serious is like hot passion.
Yeah.
who is just fired up about Israel.
And that's why I'm optimistic, despite what appears to be this rising wave of opposition and hatred that's focused on us. Because the reality is that is what is going to allow us to achieve our mission of connecting heaven and earth. If the world could care less, if we come back to our land and it's like, oh, okay, Beseder, so like, you know, they
Live
cut
and
up,
let live.
Yeah, they cut up Africa into a bunch of states. They cut up Asia into a bunch of states after World War II. Okay, so the Jews got that piece, and all the people around us said, okay, like, what do I care? It's actually not such a good land anyway. You know, then we would have a tremendous task ahead of us to how to wake up the world. Right now, the world is awake. They're focused on the plan.
Right.
Perhaps not with the same end game that we have, but that's, relatively speaking, easy to change.
The world is definitely fired up
about what's happening here.
About what's happening here, and we are definitely in a passionate time. Speaking of fired up, Moshe Rabbeinu, he is fired up, and he is now going to go to war with the kings of Sichon, right, and Heshbon, and he's going to basically fight with the Amorites. He is fighting with the Amorites, and he's going to be very proud of this. This is what I'm saying. When Moses dons his general outfit, when he takes out the bat costume, the bat, what's it called? The whatever Batman puts on, whatever
costume.
When he like goes downstairs and he stops being Bruce Wayne and he comes out with the Batmobile and he's out, you know, wrecking.
It's quick and brutal.
Right. He's intense out there, and he's going to be proud of it. He's going to say many times later on, "Oh yeah, and I fought the Amorites." I did. You know what I mean? I killed them. And where there's, of course, one of the places that was destroyed, Israel took all these cities, and Israel settled in all the Amorite cities, in Heshbon and its suburbs. For Heshbon, it was the city of Sichon, king of the. For Heshbon, it was the city of Sichon, king of the Amorite. And he had warred against the first king of Moab and took his land from his control until Arnon, and he keeps on fighting. And later on, he's going to be very proud of that. And even here's yet another poem. Woe to you, O Moab! You are lost, O people of Chemosh. He made his sons fugitive and his daughters captives of the king of the Amorites Sichon. Their sovereignty over Heshbon was lost. It was removed from Dibon, and we laid waste to Nophah, which reaches until Medeba. Okay, again, you're totally right. It definitely worked for that time. But the fantastic and famous Rabbi Kook addition here is when a young man came to him one time and he said, I want to make Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael. And he started giving him all his calculus, this, but this, and I've got friends this, and my mom is over here and that, and maybe I'm learning more Torah over there. And he says, son, before you enter the land of Israel, you got to kill Melech Heshbon. You got to kill Melech Heshbon. Now, Heshbon has a dual meaning. It means the name of this place, but also means calculations.
Yes.
You got to kill the king of calculations.
Yes.
Coming to the land of Israel is not a calculus. Okay, it's not a calculation like, well, I get an advantage here. It's not like that. You got to kill Melech Heshbon and come into the land. And that is, of course, I could see that's a good one for you, right? You never heard that one?
I've never heard that, and it makes perfect sense here in the Parsha as a whole, once again, because this theme of the knowledge that comes through accepting that you don't understand. I mean, I think that I can know in my own life I struggle a lot with cheshbonut, with like the sense of making calculus, like, oh yeah, I can do this, and then I can do that, which is important. I mean, I don't deny
you have to be real in this world, and
for sure. At the same time, it all has to be under the premise of, but you know what? What do I actually know? I'm going to do my work. I'm going to do my work in the world. I'm going to pray God that I do what's right.
Right.
And you know, what will be will be. And I believe, once again, that this is a big part of the message of death. I mean, I know in my own life, right, my father died from a freak accident. It's like he was...
And my dad kind of, too. Not a freak accident, but a freak heart attack.
A sudden moment. We've spoken about this. And one of the most precious legacies that I have is the fact that he was the type of person that never put things off when it came to relationships.
Wow.
So that we, not only myself, and I have no open sort of cheshbonot, open, bills with him,
right.
but I had that experience again and again and again with everyone who came to the house of mourning to speak to us, saying, "Oh, it's unbelievable! Like I just spoke to him the other day, or I would just sit with him, coffee or lunch, and like it was live, it was real, because you just don't know."
I really believe in that. I really believe in that.
So don't wait.
You can't. Yeah, cannot wait. Can't put anything off. My mother just said this to me, and I want to dedicate the show today actually to my mother's mother's, my grandmother's sister's daughter.
Okay.
Who was just killed in a car accident from driving from Finland to St. Petersburg. Nona. She's my family member. And it was a heartbreaker. And her son, who I met when we toured St. Petersburg with my mom, wrote to me on Facebook. And he said, Nona was killed in a car accident. And my mom said to me immediately, you can't put anything off. You got to live. I'm telling you, I've come to the conclusion that the greatest blessing of them all is l'chaim.
Yeah.
You have to have a l'chaim. You have to live l'chaim. Like I've really come to believe in that l'chaim, like to life. And finally, speaking of Chaim, one of the oldest dudes around was Og. He was the king of Bashan. Bashan is basically the Golan Heights.
Basically, yeah.
Basically, like he was a giant. Like imagine him sitting on the side of Mount Hermon as the Hermon.
Giant,
right
on the mountain.
I tell you, I sometimes think I should start a steak house in the Golan. I would call it Og's Place. Or Og Steaks, like giant steaks,
I could see you in there working the grill.
Yeah. Og Steaks,
giant Og Steaks. Beer?
By the way, you're always thinking about beer. It's speaking of beer, my wife...
the hotter it gets, the more I think about it.
My wife, it was just my birthday last week. I was 41. And my wife made me... she loves Malka's Hungarian. For her, feeding and a birthday meal is like, that's how you do a birthday. And so she made me what she thought I want to eat, and she was right. She made me great plate of nachos.
Ah.
Right? And I called it Yiddish nachos.
Why were they Yiddish nachos?
Because, Yiddish nachos. Yiddish nachos.
All right, take me a second.
We had Yiddish nachos, and it was really good.
Great.
By the way, speaking of just one more wordplay, there's... can you... What synonyms can you come up for the word indigenous? The Jewish people are indigenous, right? Whatever. Native, very good.
Local.
Aboriginal.
Okay,
but do you know about this word? Autochthonous, which is really spelled
Chthonous.
Right. Autochthonius.
Yeah.
Autochthonius.
I've seen it in academic literature.
Right.
Why are you asking me
I came up with what I know why we are autochthonous to the land of Israel. Because our tuchus has been here first, okay? And you get your tuchus out of here. We've been autochthonous here, okay?
Well, it's funny you say that, because this parsha actually fights against you in that sense.
Right.
And I think it's very important because I
actually believe... We kicked out their tuchus.
Well, that's where I'm going.
Right.
Is I actually believe, just to slip a little bit into the postmodern academic discourse, that this whole discussion of indigenous people is actually itself a product of colonialism. Right. Even though it claims to be the sort of post-colonial era, this whole idea...
Decolonialization?
All that stuff, right?
Right.
They are still living inside a colonial mindset because it was the colonial world that created this concept of indigenous. And that somehow indigenous they didn't necessarily give it a legitimacy in the colonial mind. It was actually a degraded state in their mind. But nevertheless, the world has bought into it. You know what the Torah is coming to tell us? And it's, by the way, very tied to this parsha. Is there's really a very simple reason why this is our land. Because God took us out of Egypt,
right,
led us through the desert,
right,
and brought us here.
Right.
And if you want to tell me who...
First Rashi in the Torah.
Yeah,
he'll take it away from who he wants, and he'll give it to us.
And if you want to tell me what do I care about what happened 3,000 years ago, then I'll tell you, well, God took us out of Europe, out of the ovens of the camps, and he brought us here. And in both cases, we fought battles, and we won. Now, that's not an excuse.
But didn't Yiftach use the indigenous argument?
No.
He didn't say,
no.
Well, you're faking it because you took some...
He said in the end of the day, God took it from you,
right,
and he gave it to us.
Mm-hmm.
Even Avraham, Lech Lecha, the first communication between Avraham and God is, listen, you live over here in Ur Kasdim, you need to go where I'm telling you, because the world is not just about some fatalistic sense, oh, you were born here, therefore it's yours. The world is an active engagement with God. So God from the beginning said, yes, this land can be your inheritance, but you need to understand it's your inheritance insofar as you listen to me, right? And that's why it's so important that the world that we build here is a reflection of God's will, and it's not just simply the flip side, which is, well, it's ours because we took it. I mean, that's also, Yiftach, maybe we should talk about him some other time. He gives 3 different answers, which are all very important. But in the end of the day, what it comes down to is the connection between Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael comes through our fulfillment of the divine mission.
Moses kills Og. He kills this giant.
Single-handed battle.
Single-handed battle. The rabbis say that he jumped up 10 yards, and he was 10 yards tall, and he hit him with like a 10-yard stick, and he hit him in the ankle.
That's right. And Og dropped the mountain that he was holding over his head, about to drop on Moshe, on his own head, and that was it.
That was it.
I love to see that.
I'm always sad a little bit when Og goes down.
It's been a long time coming.
But he's like this ancient pillar. I hope we find something of Og's one day. You know,
some very large iron bed.
That's
Og.
That's Og.
Moshe says it later in Devarim.
Right, and it says like his bed. Isn't his bed in Ramban or in Amman?
It refers to exactly where it is. Yes, and how big it was.
It's a big bed.
Yeah, people come by and say, "Woo, look at that! He must have been some big guy."
I'd love to find that stuff. Also, but I've been dreaming about finding. I've been dreaming about finding 2 things, 3 things really. Very quickly, if I could find anything, it would be Jeremiah's scroll of purchase of the land in Anatot.
Yeah,
that's one. I think the folks at Ir David will find that. That'll happen. I want to find Samson's gate from the city of Gaza. It's somewhere in the mountains of Hebron.
Hebron, right?
Right. And the third one is to find the tomb of the Ramban Nachmanides, which got lost. Yeah. It's 100 years after the Ramban was here, and somehow his tomb is not known to us. And I feel in my heart that if we would only look at the writings, and go to like one of these things, go on a
make
trek.
A good movie.
Yeah, like go on a trek, just like Professor Ehud Netzar found the tomb of Herod the Great.
Right.
We'll find it. He's just hidden somewhere. Any case, there's a lot of things to find. There's a lot of things to pray for. There's a lot of things to be happy for. I'm happy to be with Rabbi Mike Feurer here at Beit Midrash Sulam Yaakov on the Land of Israel Network, on the Yishai Fleischer Show, Spiritual Cafe. I want to thank all of you folks for being with me. I want to thank God for the lemon water and for the land of Israel. And I want to pray for the health of your children. And if you don't mind throwing back a prayer for Elazar Menachem Ben Malka, I would appreciate that. Toda Rabah. And God bless all of you folks wherever you are. Keep broadcasting, rebroadcasting the story. Tune in to God. He's broadcasting on the Land of Israel Network. He's actually broadcasting on his own network. It's called The Universe. You just have to kind of tune in. He's 24/7, and there's an incredible, loud broadcast that's happening right now. It's the greatest music you'll ever hear. It's the greatest teaching you'll ever hear. Just connect to it. And I want to thank you, Rabbi Mike, for being with me here today. L'chaim. That's it. All right, folks. More great stuff is on the way. Stay tuned. Stay strong. Stay connected. God bless you. And shalom.
Who are we as a people? Who are we as a nation? What does it mean to be a Jew in the land of Israel, as a Jew in Judea? What is our message to the world? We're finally back in our land, and we get to ask these questions.
Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to make Judea and Samaria an issue for the entire world, to know that the Jews have a place in the world.
Israel Inspired with Aryeh Bromwitz and Jeremy Gimpel on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.